And welcome back, rugby fans, to Rugby411. As always, I'm your host. My name is Joshua Shibata, and this is our Week 3 review, our power rankings after 3 weeks in the 2025 MLR season. And man, it was another exciting week of rugby action. Some very interesting developments. I don't know if you call them upsets, but definitely a mighty giant in Major League Rugby has fallen. There's been quite a bit of movement in the power rankings because of some of the developments. There's definitely an interesting theme running with the results as well, which you'll probably notice from the title of this video. I've decided to call it the Curse of the Bye. We'll get more into that as well, but before we do that, this is my power rankings. If you're new to the power rankings for Rugby411, is based purely off of what you do on the pitch, who you beat, where you play, where you win. Has nothing really to do with the rankings, so you might have the top ranked teams in the respective Eastern Western conferences. May not necessarily be the number 1 or number 2 team, but definitely the team that's been doing the best, that's probably been winning at least for the immediate time, and beating some of the better tier teams. They're the ones that are going to be at the top, while of course teams that are losing to lower ranking teams will fall quite rapidly to the bottom, and some teams unfortunately do not get very far from the basement. Case in point, we'll start right off with it. Again, everyone's second favorite team in Major League Rugby, Anthem Rugby Carolina, still at number 11, still looking for that elusive first win. And boy, did they come close, losing to Miami, their fellow newcomer team of last season, 31-32. A heartbreaking loss, but a very exciting game in it. In the game, Anthem started off really hot. A lot of back and forth action. They actually took the lead after hydration break from a very heads-up play from last season's Rookie of the Year. I'm sorry, 2 seasons ago, Major League Rugby Rookie of the Year, Sam Gala, scoring. Anthem, and it was another week of just cards galore. Again, I'm really tempted to bring back my penalty card segment from last season, because there's been a lot of cards, and we're already in the 3rd week of the season. Granted, it's still relatively new. Some teams have automatically been on a bye right after week 1, so they're still kind of coming out of quote-unquote preseason. But man, there's been a lot of cards, and Anthem actually got back-to-back yellow cards after taking the lead. But fortunately, their defense really held up. They prevented Miami from scoring when they were 2 men down, though right after the half, Miami scored immediately, allowing to take the lead, and then Miami got themselves a yellow card, which allowed Anthem to not only take the lead back, but also to score their 4th try to get the bonus point as well. The try that was scored was, of course, by the number 1 overall pick in the 2024 MLR draft, Eric Storty, who has had so far a phenomenal debut start in Major League Rugby, a key player for Anthem Rugby Carolina. And now the score is 31-22, okay? And this is kind of important because at that point, Miami was on the drive to score again. Fortunately, Anthem got a penalty, but Anthem went for a penalty kick. Lena Latu, the fly half for Anthem, goes for the penalty kick to try to get Anthem ahead by 9 points. They're only ahead by 6 at this point. He misses the penalty kick, and that would prove to unfortunately be the big difference maker there, as just minutes later, Miami were able to score to now take over the lead, converted try, and they were able to seal it 32-31. It looked like Anthem was going to get their very first win in franchise history, but Miami stole it at the very end to leave Anthem not only winless, but still sitting at the bottom of the power rankings. Right ahead of them is the only team this week that had a bye, Rugby Football Club LA, which maybe might be a good thing, maybe not, because again, depending how you look at the trend of what happened this week, being on a bye may not be a good thing for teams. Number 9, kind of a shocking loss here, is Seattle remains winless after 2 games, losing to the West Coast rival Houston, who's looking really, really hot, losing 21-24. The game, though, was a little interesting. It's a very close game. Again, Houston won 24-21. Seattle and Houston going back and forth in this game. In the second half, following a try by Devin Short to take the lead for Seattle, 9 minutes left in the game, a crucial error by Pago Haini, who did a knee to the head of a player who was falling down, but unfortunately when he tackled, kind of clipped him in the head. He gets a red card for that, has to leave the field, and that red card really is what did it for Seattle, as they were ahead at the game at that point. And Houston took advantage of it by scoring a try to take the lead. Seattle then gets a second red card. I told you, there's a lot of cards in this week. And that allowed Seattle to, unfortunately, fall further behind to Houston. Houston takes the win, 24-21. Very close game. Seattle also committed more penalties than Houston. I believe it was like 14 penalties to Houston's 9. Again, when you get past 10 penalties in a game, it's not a good thing for a team. Very rarely does a team with that many penalties gets the win. And unfortunately, Seattle winless starting off of the season. You're only two MLR teams to have back-to-back championships. And Seattle not looking very good. Though, again, we've talked about this before, Seattle does tend to have a slow start at the beginning of seasons and ramps up at the end. We'll see if that happens again this season. Next, another team that lost, NOLA Gold, losing to Utah, 55-21. Now, this one was not anything to do with penalties. It was just a very lopsided game. With that loss, NOLA strolls down from the number 6 position to number 8, losing to Utah, who I'll mention when we start talking about Utah, looking like a well-oiled machine. NOLA tried their best to go back and forth with Utah. Some scores, especially a try by Ed Fido, who is looking back to form as he was a couple years ago, where he had the most tries in Major League Rugby for the season. Utah was down 11-14, but Utah takes the lead. Utah gets a yellow card. Again, so many cards in this game, in this week, and NOLA was able to capitalize with a try for them. And at the half, though, Utah is ahead 21-11. Utah, though, in the second half, committing a lot of penalties, allowing NOLA to stay in the game. Utah's strong defense keeps NOLA out of the try until you get this amazing try by former LA Giltinis Jordan Traynor. Jordan Traynor, who scores a beautiful go-ahead play minutes in the second half. Joel Hodgson comes in for the very impressive D'Angelo Luila, who was phenomenal in week 1. Unfortunately, took a pretty bad head knock minutes into the second half. So hopefully okay, but Joel Hodgson, who wasn't in the first game for Utah, completely took over the game, did a really, really great job for Utah, and that kind of sealed it for NOLA, unfortunately. NOLA started getting further behind. There was a yellow card to Jordan Traynor as well, and Utah ended up just completely blowing NOLA away at that point in the game. And so NOLA again falls just short of Utah. Well, not just short, but falls pretty short to Utah, 55-21. We'll go more into the Utah side, as they just were phenomenal in this game, but NOLA falling down a couple of spots from the number 6 spot. Also falling a couple of spots from number 5 to number 7, Old Glory DC, who also played in a pretty lopsided game to a very hot San Diego Legion, 26-10. This game, not really a lot to talk about. It was a very back and forth. It was a very big defensive struggle in the first half. It took about 20 minutes until the first score was done by San Diego. San Diego was leading at the half, 12-3, and then pretty much kind of ran away with it in the second half. I'll talk a little bit more about it because it's more San Diego's game when we get to San Diego. The game was pretty chippy. There were kind of a few fights that broke out. San Diego did get 2 yellow cards near the end of the game as well, but in the end, didn't really matter as Old Glory fell to San Diego 26-10, so they fall a couple spots to the number 7 spot. Now, in a very surprising development, your reigning, defending, back-to-back, 2-time MLR champions, the New England Free Jacks, losing to the Chicago Hounds. And it's not just a loss. This was a rematch of the Eastern Conference Final from last season where New England was able to beat Chicago. But man, this game, it wasn't even close in this one. Chicago pretty much manhandles New England 36-7, causing New England to fall from the number 2 spot all the way down to number 6. I honestly don't know what to say about this game. New England just really didn't look good at all. Not to take anything away from Chicago. Chicago really won the game. But very shocking because this was also a game where Jason Patros came back in. He didn't play in the first game for New England. Again, New England was on a bye. And so was Old Glory, and so was Seattle, was on a bye, and they unfortunately didn't, just looked really flat. They just did not look very good. They only scored 1 try in the game. They were scoreless at the half, 15-0. It was really all Chicago, and I mean, it wasn't like New England didn't have any chances. Chicago had a couple yellow cards. Again, had a couple yellow cards in this game. That's where New England was able to score at least 1 try. Jason Patros was able to score the only points for the game. He scored the only try. He scored it right underneath the post, so it was an automatic 7. But that was it. That was all the game was. New England really didn't do anything else. It was really, really shocking. Again, don't know if it was because of the bye. Chicago looked really great. Chicago's defense also. We'll talk about that when we talk about Chicago. Noah Brown was amazing for Chicago defensive-wise. But just everything that New England tried, Chicago just was one step ahead. And they really, really looked good. Again, I'll talk more about it when I get to Chicago, when we get there. Just know that New England, again, falling 7 spots. 4 spots to number 6. Not looking very good right now to start off the season. Moving on to number 5, we have Utah, who again, as I mentioned before, slaughtering NOLA Gold, moving up 3 spots to the number 5 spot. Man, Utah looked really, really good in this game. As I mentioned before, D'Angelo Luila, before he got hurt, he has been amazing for Utah. This guy is basically the Jason Patros of this year, coming from nowhere to be a phenomenal, really major focal point for this Utah offense. He had a beautiful cross-pitch kick that ended up coming into a try. As I mentioned before, nothing more beautiful than a perfectly placed kick to go into try. Luila did that right before, unfortunately, getting hurt and being knocked out into the second half. But like I said, from that point, Joel Hodgson, who has always been a focal point of Utah, took control of the game. In this game, Joe Mono was amazing. He got a hat trick, got his 30th try overall in Major League Rugby history, moving him to 7th in the league. So great job for Joe Mono. As I mentioned before, Ed Fido also scored a try. He's been looking great in form. So Utah looking really, really phenomenal in this game. As I mentioned before, 5 tries by Utah. NOLA just really didn't look like they had anything in this game. And yeah, Joel Hodgson just looking phenomenal. Joel Hodgson also had a cross kick try to Nick Ben to end up putting the dagger into Nola. But man, Utah looking really good in this game. Second time in a row that they scored 50 plus points. I think they only scored 50 points in the first game, only 50, but scoring 50 points in the first game, 55 in the second, so back-to-back games with 50 points. If you go follow Major League Rugby Stats, MLR Stats on Instagram, which is a great follow, James Dealey on the Twitter, or X as it's called now, he always puts up some amazing stats. Utah tied for the fastest team to score 100 points in a season. 2 games only, and Utah is looking like a well-oiled machine after, oddly enough, taking the bye in the very first week, but they're looking really good and a threat in that Western Conference. Miami, as I mentioned before, barely squeaking by. I mean, they were able to pull off the win, but they were struggling against Anthem Carolina. So because of that, I kept them at number 4 because I didn't feel like that win was very... I mean, they're struggling with the last place team. Barely holding on with the win, so I'm not really big on making people move down unless they absolutely have to after they win, but definitely doesn't warrant them a move up. As well as with Houston, who again, I felt with the Houston game when they beat Seattle. Granted, beating Seattle is no easy task, but if it wasn't for Seattle with their 2 red cards, I think that game, the score was 24-21. I think the game might have been a little bit different. So Houston just barely holding on, so they stick to number 3. The big mover, of course, moving up 5 spots from the number 7 to number 2, the Chicago Hounds, who, as I mentioned before, looking like a well-oiled machine. They're looking like the team that we've always been talking about on paper, especially when you have such weapons like Dylan Fawcett, Adrian Carlisi, not Nate Osberger, Julian Dominguez, Luke White, just some amazing talent on that Chicago team. Geronimo Gomez-Vara from Dallas, they are now looking really good in this. Michael Hand, who scored his very first try in Major League Rugby, his Major League Rugby career, a USA Sevens player, looking phenomenal in Chicago. Let's talk about this game real quick. In the game, the one negative for Chicago, unfortunately, a couple of injuries that happened in this. Dylan the Butcher Fawcett had a head knock in the beginning of the second half, did not return at all in the game. Unfortunately, is not in the roster for Chicago's game coming up this weekend, so I don't know if they're doing that just for safety precautions or if the injury's worse. Also, same thing, Adrian Carlisi, very talented fly half, also was knocked out of the game, had to be replaced by Tom Hickelston, and he did great, but Adrian Carlisi also not in the lineup for Chicago's upcoming weekend game, so Chicago suffering quite a few injuries from this game, but again, looking really great in the game. Shout out to Noah Brown for not only scoring a try in this game, but defensive phenomenon in it. 2 tries he prevented from scoring. One of them, he literally knocked the ball right as it was about to be put down. Amazing defensive play. Another one caused the New England player to put his hand out into touch right before placing the ball down. Honestly, the score was pretty lopsided, but maybe might have made a difference in this game. So Chicago looking great in this, earning the spot to move to the number 2, maybe making a run for that Eastern Conference Championship, possibly making an appearance in the Major League Rugby Championship. And finally, your number 1 team, no surprise here, still looking unstoppable, the San Diego Legion, taking down Old Glory 26-10. Again, as I mentioned before, pretty defensive struggle game, chippy game. Christian Poy-Devin, former LA Guiltinis, was able to get a try in there. Other than that, not too much to really report. San Diego, as I mentioned, got 2 yellow cards at the very end of the game. By that point, it was a little too late, but man, lots of cards given out in this game. Again, don't know if it's still because it's still early in the season or if the referees or the officials are starting to call a lot more, but a lot of cards in this week. So that is our power rankings. Again, pretty interesting developments. If you were to tell me that the two teams that were in last season's Major League Rugby Championship were not in the top 4, I would have been kind of shocked. And yeah, they are sitting down here. Again, still very early. New England technically has only played 2 games. Seattle only 3. So a lot could happen from then till now, especially with Seattle. Seattle does have a history of coming back from slow starts, so we'll see. But hey, look at Miami. Miami, a team that was just barely missing out on the playoffs, looking pretty strong at number 4. Utah charging their way up. We'll see if Anthem does ever get that first win. I still fully believe they'll get at least 4 wins this season. Kind of debating whether or not this weekend, which I'll talk about in my next video, whether or not they'll get that elusive first win, but we'll see. But that is our power rankings for the week. Now, moving on to something that I know a lot of people are waiting for, our SuperBru Pick Em results, and here they are. Congratulations to Cross Fox, longtime player, first time here this season at the number 1 spot. He and our second place, all J Long, our very first SuperBru Pick Em winner from 3 years ago. 3 years ago, yeah. Both of them got all the games correct. CrossFox just got 0.5 more of a bonus point, so he's sitting number 1 at 8 points. All J Long is 7.5. My buddy Villafero, KDC, and Harry came in at 3rd with 5 points, and then Jahego at the number 6 spot, tied with B2 Woodrow for 4.83. Jahego, never sure if I'm getting that correct. But those are our top 5. Unfortunately, and oddly enough, the bottom place wooden spoon, Lady Juliet, which is a very interesting trend that's starting. Lady Juliet, who was our first place winner last week, got the wooden spoon this week. Mr. Rugby, our week 1 winner, got the wooden spoon last week. So it just seems like whoever gets first place tends to be at the very bottom the following week. So CrossFox, you kind of been on notice. It's almost like what's going on with the trend here, where if you were on a bye, Seattle, New England, and Old Glory were all on byes. They all lost. It seems like if you win our SuperBru, you tend to fall apart the very following week. We'll see if CrossFox is able to break that curse or not. So those are our weekly results. Let's see our overall leaderboard. And so, of course, that means, man, there's been quite a change. CrossFox and All J Long jumping up 5 spots and 7 spots, respectively, to the number 1 and number 2 spot. CrossFox is just 1 point ahead of All J Long. Number 3 is Mr. Rugby, who drops down a spot to 3rd. Seawolves Jeep actually moves up a spot to number 4, and Manxman moves up 2 spots to number 12. We're also going to look at our bottom 5, and it's actually some interesting, really cool developments. So number 21, Tex and Sunshine. Congratulations, buddy. I told you, just keep picking. You're going to move yourself out from the bottom. Sunshine moved up 3 spots to number 22. Tex moved up 2 spots to number 21. John Hawkins, unfortunately, dropped a spot to 23. Our reigning, defending SuperBru Pick Em champion, JZS, dropped 7 spots to 24. Hopefully he'll be able to build himself back out from the basement. Number 25, BT Woodrow, actually moved up a spot. And Theo Good, unfortunately, dropped down 5 spots. Technically, he's the bottom. We do have a GMV Rugby who, unfortunately, has not put a pick in. Hopefully you do, buddy. There's still, again, anyone can win. You could be at the bottom here, and you can still make your way to the top. My good buddy, Frisco Flame, he struggled the one season that he started playing. Literally was at the bottom for like half the season. Made it to like the top 10 at the very end. So still plenty to play for. So GMV Rugby, don't forget to put your picks in. And of course, everybody, you do realize the top winner at the end of the season gets a t-shirt of a Major League Rugby team of their choice. Also $20 Thanks to Rugby League and Union Fan and myself for donations. Still, guys, if you want to donate money, you still can. Half of the proceeds will go to the Red Cross and those first responders that helped out in the SoCal fires. So, make sure you get your SuperBru Pick Ems in, as I'll mention in the next video, because we do have a Friday footy game. But that's pretty much it. So as always, let me know what you think about the power rankings, who you feel should be in the top, or is this the way that it would be, or do you feel that some people who are on the top should be more at the bottom? Or do you feel that Chicago earns the spot to be in number 1 because of such an impressive display against the New England Free Jacks? Let me know in the comments. As always, thank you very much for checking out my video, and I'll see you on the pitch.